see if that did it. Alright, great, we're live on YouTube. See if we're live on Twitch. Update my category and everything. Trying to get a quick thumbnail for the YouTube stream, I should say. And then we will get started. Alright, got something up there. Streams look like they're running. Sorry if there's an echo there, but should be good now. Alright, trying a new mic today. I don't like the way it looks that much, but I think it'll be better quality. Turn myself down a little bit here. Alright, let's get into it. Welcome back to today's security news. Here on January 24th, we've got plenty of good stories to cover. So let us jump into it. Share my first screen here. Actually, let me restart this. Dun, 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 dun. Oops. Holy moly. Alright, second take. Welcome back to today's security news here January 24th. We've got lots of great stories to cover. So without further ado, let's jump right into it with the first one. So the first story here is from Google. So you'll see it's from Apple. Days after Google, Apple reveals exploited zero-day in browser engine. So let's go into what this is. This one is stemming from a type confusion error, which is basically what happens when an application incorrectly assumes the input it received is a certain type without actually validating or incorrectly validating that to be the case. So this is the bug that's going on in Safari. And what does this mean? Well, luckily there's already a patch out there, so update your operating systems, keep everything in check for iOS, iPad, Mac, TV. It's all got an updated version. And there's a link here as well. If this is something you want to make sure you got the right version, feel free to check out the link in the show notes. And for the next one, or sorry, it's another part of this breach is yes, there's a patch release, but browser-based phishing attacks are exploding, according to the article. So this is a report from Menlo Security. There's a 198% increase in browser-based phishing attacks in the second half of 2023 compared to the first half of 2023. So evasive attacks, another category, had a even bigger surge by 206%. So these attacks are becoming more and more prevalent. So if you're a security administrator, make sure your team is keeping their browser updated. If you're an individual, keep your browser updated. You'll see updates here in the top right behind the camera. When it's time to update, it'll pop up here in the top right. You can click it, update it, super easy. Setting up automated updates is even better. And another quote we have from Menlo real quick is that the browser is the business application enterprises can't live without, but it has fallen behind from a security and management perspective. So super true. Companies need this on their day-to-day operations, and like I said, super important to keep them updated, make it automated if you can, and keep your company safe. The next one, Subway puts a Lockbit investigation on the menu. And what this article is talking about is some proprietary data has been stolen from Subway. So here's the quote. Last week, the infamous ransomware group claimed on its Tor leak site that it exfiltrated SBS, or Subway's internal system, which includes hundreds of gigabytes of data in all financial aspects of the franchise, including employee salaries, franchise royalty payments, and master franchise commission payments, restaurant turnovers, and much more. So that is quite a bit of information. So for an individual user, it may not come across as something that's super important, but for Subway, if this is all true, that is a bit concerning for them. And part of this, Lockbit, the ransomware group, they claim they're going to put the information up for sale on February 2nd unless its ransom is paid. And there's no specific ransomware amount that has been given. And what can companies beyond Subway do to protect against Lockbit? So Lockbit is a pretty big ransomware group. So ZeroFox, another security company, recommends the following to protect against them: getting secure password policies and multi-factor authentication, get ongoing monitoring for compromised account credentials, monitor for compromised accounts being brokered in the deep and dark web forums, like the Tor site we mentioned earlier, then backing up critical, proprietary, or sensitive data to secure off-site or cloud servers, implementing network segmentation, develop a comprehensive incident response playbook, implement email protections like DMARC, and keeping versions and patching up to date. So certainly something to keep in mind to protect against ransomware groups like Lockbit, who are fairly big in their operation. Next story today is a name you may recognize, Fortra. They are the parent company of GoAnywhere. They were involved in a major breach last year, and there is a exploit that has been released for a authentication bypass bug. So we've talked a little bit about authentication bypass bugs on this channel, and this is another instance of that. So for quick context, if you don't know what GoAnywhere MFT is, it's a web-based managed file transfer tool that helps organizations transfer files securely with partners and keep audit logs of who accessed all shared files. So pretty simple goal there for GoAnywhere. And this bug was patched on December 7th with the release of MFT 7.4.1. So this was silently done, it says, so they're not notifying all their customers that it was going on. It was just part of the patch notes. And the company only publicly disclosed it today in an advisory offering limited information. So it sounds like actually it wasn't part of the patch notes, so it was just completely silent. If you have not updated to 7.4.1 or later for Go Anywhere, like this instance is 7.4.0, and you're trying to figure out, hey, have I been compromised? The easiest indicator of compromise that can be analyzed is for any new additions to the admin users group in the Go Anywhere admin portal. So you'll see here in this instance, there's H3 admin and hacked 3. Some indicators that you may be there. And if the attacker has left this user here, you may be able to observe its last login activity here to gauge an approximate date of compromise. So the user may not still be there. If there's nothing there, I'm sure there's still some investigation that needs to be done to make sure you haven't had any compromise. But if the user's still there, that can be a useful tool to look into. Horizon 3, who's the group that was given that quote up above, now that that indicator of compromise has been released, it's very unlikely that the threat actors will start scanning for and compromise all Go Anywhere. Or sorry, it is very likely that threat actors will start scanning for and compromise all Go Anywhere MFT instances left unpatched. So if you're using Go Anywhere, this MFT application, haven't patched, now that this information is out there, it's even more important to get this patched. Next one is our old friends at Ivanti. So we've been hearing a lot about Ivanti, talked exclusively about it in the last security video that we made. They've had a lot of vulnerabilities going on, a lot being exploited. And it looks like, if you remember last time, the company Ivanti gave a mitigation effort for the vulnerabilities it currently had in place because it hadn't pushed a patch out yet. So unfortunately, if you are pushing configurations after this mitigation's in place, you're still vulnerable. So here's a quote from Ivanti directly. Customers should stop pushing configurations to appliances with the XML in place and not resume pushing configurations until the appliance is patched. So if they're putting that mitigating effort in place, you should just leave it be until Ivanti releases a patch instead of continuing to push new configurations. They say when the configuration is pushed to the appliance, it stops some key web services from functioning and stops the mitigation from functioning. This only applies to customers who push configurations to appliances, including configuration pushes through Pulse 1 or NSA. This can occur regardless of a full or partial configuration push. So definitely something to keep in mind if you are an Ivanti user. Be careful to push that configuration. We talked a little bit about this last time, but this attack, or a big part of this attack, has been perpetrated by this Chinese state-backed group, UNC 5221. They've already backdoored more than 2,100 Ivanti appliances, according to Velocity. And it's a pretty significant amount that they've done there. And Mandiant, who's another group that's been monitoring UNC 5221, said they also found 5 custom malware strains deployed on breached systems to steal credentials, drop additional malicious payloads, and deploy web shells. So attackers have been harvesting and stealing account and session data from the compromised networks of many victims, including government and military entries or entities worldwide, telecom companies, defense contractors, tech companies, banking, finance, all across the board are being compromised by this vulnerability. So get your mitigating efforts in place and do not mess with it until the patch has been released by Ivanti. The last bit on this piece is the shadow server. So again, we have talked about shadow server in the past. Or this one is actually for Atlassian. Sorry about that. So this is for Confluence, which we've talked about a little bit. Let me give you some context. So attackers have been exploiting an Atlassian remote code execution flaw. And this is specifically for Confluence, and it's specifically for Confluence servers. So there's a lot of different versions of it. So you'll see here, you can execute code on vulnerable Confluence data center and Confluence server endpoints. So if you're using Confluence Cloud, this doesn't affect you. It is exclusively Confluence data center and Confluence server versions. So Shadow Server has mentioned that they've seen a lot of attempts on here from a little over 600 unique IP addresses. This is the data that they've seen that's targeting this RCE, or remote code execution. And Shadow Server, I'd recommend checking out their site to look into this kind of data. They're super useful company and tool. Okay, and like I mentioned here, it's affecting Confluence Data Center, Confluence Server. These versions have been affected. So a fix is in place, and it's got the version available. So if you're using Atlassian, any of these Confluence products, make sure you're updated to these versions to keep your company secure. Next story is about Microsoft, and they are the victim of a Russian state-sponsored cyber attack. So what's going on here? Microsoft's corporate systems were compromised back in late November 2023 by the same Russian nation-state actor behind the 2020 SolarWinds Orion software supply chain cyber attack. That one was massive back in 2020. Known to Microsoft threat researchers as Midnight Blizzard, and you may have heard some other names for them as APT29, Advanced Persistent Threat is what APT is, Cozy Bear, or Nobelium. The breach was not detected until January 12th, so about 2 months after they were compromised, it was not detected until then. And from the research from the Microsoft Security Research Center, this is what they found. So that nation-state advanced persistent threat actor, they use a simple password spray attack to access a test account, leading to the compromise of a very small percentage of Microsoft corporate email accounts. And then the breach email accounts include those belonging to senior leadership, as well as members of the cybersecurity and legal teams, among others, Microsoft said. Apparently, this attacker was poking around for information Microsoft had on their operation. So if they were just in there to know what Microsoft knew about them, that's probably best case scenario for them. Is that 100% likely? I don't know. I really don't know. And we've got a quote here from Ari Zoberstein, the co-founder and CEO of Gem Security. Surprisingly, the adversary managed to stay persistent in the cloud infrastructure for more than 2 months before being discovered. We recommend that organizations implement continuous monitoring of their cloud logs so they can spot anomalous activities before attackers can access and exfiltrate sensitive data. Yeah, definitely something worth keeping in mind if you're working on a security team, is monitoring those cloud logs to look for anything a little suspicious. The next one we're going to jump into is a VMware bug that has been talked about a little bit prior to January 22nd when this article came out, but still wanted to go through it with y'all. So this one was by a Chinese state-sponsored cyber attack group, and for a little context, it was a 9.8 out of 10 critical CVSS rating, and we've talked about CVSS a little bit, just to give some context. It's the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, I believe is the acronym. It's just used to compare vulnerabilities to each other, give them a score out of 10. And it was an out-of-bounds write vulnerability affecting the vCenter server, which is their centralized platform for managing virtual environments. So this was a huge deal for VMware. And talked about here Mandiant, which we also mentioned in the last article. They revealed that a Chinese threat actor, it tracks as UNC 3886, was covertly exploiting this vulnerability as a zero-day since at least late 2021. So this has been something going on for years, which is crazy. We talked about the last one is 2 months. This one is freaking 2 years, man. It's wild to be doing it for that long in the background. And this talks about the strategy, a little bit of UNC 3886. Their long-term strategy employed by this group in exploiting vulnerabilities aligns with the broader modus operandi, or motivation, of Chinese state-sponsored cyber activities. Their efforts are often characterized by strategic patience, persistence, and a focus on long-term intelligence gathering. This approach is indicative of their wider geopolitical and economic objectives, where sustained cyber operations support broader state goals. In this context, this group activities fit neatly into the larger narratives of Chinese systematic and methodical approach to cyber espionage and intelligence. So they're just in there getting information that they can use for political or geopolitical gain, economic gain. So it is interesting. I mean, we see a lot of different ransomware attacks, and it's not what their goal is. They're just trying to get more information. So what does this mean for VMware customers? So organizations that patched back in October may now need to double check their work to make sure they weren't compromised in the 0-day period. And despite the hubbub made over this vulnerability in VMware's efforts to patch as many devices as possible, it is plausible that numerous organizations may still be running unpatched or outdated versions. So make sure you're updating your versions. Hey, we got a first-time chatter here. Hey, Lumen. The Lumen. Thanks for stopping by. We're just going through the security news for the day. Good to see you. So the next, we're going to go through a few different breaches that have been going on. Mic muffler. Mic sounding bad. I'll listen to it in post and see if I can make it much better. Still learning for sure, trying to get our stream set up a little better each time. But I'll go into this Lone Depot cyber attack. It's got a data breach for 16.6 million people here. So a little context about Lone Depot. It's a major U.S. non-bank mortgage lender with roughly 6,000 employees and over 140 billion in service loans. And so after confirming that millions of people had their data stolen, the company said it would notify individuals impacted by this data breach, providing them with free credit monitoring and identity service protections. And like it mentions here, given that Loan Depot stores sensitive customer financial and bank account info, those affected by this breach should know they might be the target of phishing attacks and identity theft attempts. And Loan Depot hasn't specifically shared what type of customer personal information was accessed from its systems. Next, we've got another breach from Trello that has about 15 million accounts and their email addresses were breached. Trello API was abused in this one. So for brief context on Trello, it's an online project management tool owned by Atlassian. Atlassian again, popping up in a lot of vulnerabilities and breaches. Is commonly used by businesses to organize data and tasks into boards, cards, and lists. So for some context on what was taken, you can see here the data breach contained emails, usernames, full names, and other account info, and had a little over 15 million unique lines. So a little context is this information could be used in targeted phishing campaigns like we talked about the last one. And for anyone that's concerned, the Trello leak has been added to the Have I Been Pwned data breach notification service, so you can check it out there, put in your information, and see if you've had any breaches going on, or if you were part of that. The next breach is from Jason's Deli, and this one was caused by credential stuffing. So for some brief context on Jason's Deli, and Lumen, I will get to your question in just a few minutes after we go through these stories. So hang with me and I'll get right to you. So Jason's Deli is an American restaurant chain with 200 plus branches in almost 30 states, 6,000 employees, and over 400 million in revenue. So they have quite a big reach. I'm not too familiar with them, but they seem to be in a lot of areas. And just for context on what kind of information was stolen, the name, address, phone number, birthday, their preferred Jason's Deli location, their account number, and then truncated version of gift card numbers and credit card numbers. So good amount of information, and similar to the last ones, it could lead to more targeted phishing attempts, which I think we'll see a little bit more here. Jason's Deli, in this instance, said they can't see how many accounts have been active or how many accounts have been impacted. They don't have a specific amount, but according to the a listing at the office of the Maine Attorney General, the total number of Alright, testing. This might be a little more scuffed. Alright, can you hear me? Yeah, that's pretty bad. Alright, well we're going to do our best here with the headphones dying, and we're going to get this finalized and moved on to the next story. So the next one is Trezor. They had a breach that exposed about 66,000 customers. And with this one, it's a hardware cryptocurrency wallet. They're investigating the incident is ongoing, but there's no evidence so far that users' digital assets were compromised in the incident. Like I mentioned, there were 66,000 users that have interacted with that support desk since December 2021. They may have had their usernames and email addresses exposed to unauthorized party. Postal addresses, phone numbers, and other PII were also stored in the system, but Trezor said these were not part of the breach. And there's already been 41 confirmed cases where this data has been exposed and exploited. And like others, be vigilant for potential phishing scams. Trezor says in here they're never going to ask you for credentials for your site, and there's been some breaches or some hacking attempts that have been reaching out trying to get that information. Another recent story that happened was the Twitter account of the SEC getting breached, and this was reported to be caused by a SIM swapping attack. But even with that being said, it also happened because the MFA for the account was disabled. So the combination of those two definitely led to some issues. Another story we'll quickly go through, something you never want to see, is the CISA director Jen Easterly was targeted in a swatting incident. So always sad to see. Swatting is like one of the more deplorable things you can do. Horrible to do any swatting. Next one, Twitter is adding passkey support for iOS users in the US only. So this is our last story. And this will allow for more secure logging into Twitter, but as I mentioned here, something that's really important with this passkey launch is to make sure your iCloud account is secure. So no reuse passwords, setting up MFA, keeping everything safe there, because this passkey is going to be tied to it. So if your security in your iCloud account is weak, same result's going to happen here. But that's all we've got. Thank you for tuning in. We'll work to fix this setup every video, every stream. So thank you for tuning in, and see you next time. All right, the Lumen. I'm not sure if you're still hanging around. Are you still here? All right. So you said, I have an old tower and laptop that I wish to repurpose, but I think they are infected with malware or some spyware. How do I use my new laptop to connect without being infected so that I can clear them and repurpose them? How do I use my old... I have suggestions I can throw out, but I am not an expert by any means in this particular field. So I truthfully wouldn't feel comfortable throwing something out that you would try and then potentially get the new device infected. So I will pass this one off to someone that has more knowledge than me. But I appreciate you stopping by and asking your question. If there's anything I can help with, I certainly will give more detailed answers. But on this one, not my expertise, unfortunately, and I don't want to screw you over. So I'm not going to make a suggestion on that one. No worries. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good one. Alright, and we're going to wrap up stream there, fairly short, but just wanted to go through the security news. Like I mentioned, we will make this setup a little better each stream. Got a new camera on the way. We'll get the microphone going a little better so it's not so scuffed. But thanks for everyone stopping by, and have a great day.